Okay, that's it. The little message. So welcome everyone again, and yes, this webinar, when we were in discussions with some partners working on youth homelessness, we realized that there was an identified need on the ground in several countries about how to do better collaboration between partners that are working in different domains, and all of them work to some extent on youth homelessness, or that they support to some extent young people facing housing exclusion, but there was still like a lack of collaboration between them. So considering the great experiences that we have in some countries like in Ireland and Wales, but also in other places like Scotland or Denmark, we came up with the idea of doing this webinar for other organizations to learn how these experiences are working in other countries and to get some inspiration about these good practices, to know what is the added value of this more structured collaboration, and what it can bring in the fight to end with homelessness, but also to reflect about what are the particularities of each national or regional context, and what can be implemented or transferred from some countries to others. So that is a little bit the background of this webinar. And now I'm going very quickly through the agenda. So first of all, we will have a presentation, 25 minutes from Bill about the end youth homelessness in Wales. Then we will go to Shivan's presentation about the work of the Irish Coalition to End Youth Homelessness. And then at the end, we will have 30 minutes for Q&A. So please, if you have some questions during the presentations, please write them down so we can all answer them together at the end of the webinar, because we will have 30 minutes. It will be quite some time, so there will be time for all the necessary explanations. And yes, during the Q&A, of course, if you have no problem with it, then I will ask you to turn on your cameras and mics so we can have a better exchange between us and the presenters. And I think that with this, I see that more people are joining. That's great. Without further ado, we can start with Bill's presentation, and I'm going to share it now.
This is a partnership work in action, Sergio, with you sharing my slides.
Yes, it's meta coalition work. I hope that the Zoom program allows me to share. Yep. So you can see now the first slides, right?
Yep, I've got it.
Yep. Great. So Bill, if you want to introduce yourself first, and then we can move on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Sergio. And yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Good morning and Bore da pawb. It's great to be on the first of these webinars. I'm excited to be a part of it, and I'm really excited to hear about the experiences from other countries across Europe, to learn more about what's going on across Europe, so we can pinch some of the good practice and bring it back to Wales. So yeah, my name's Bill Rowlands, and I'm the head of End Youth Homelessness Cymru, a coalition campaign that's been in Wales since 2017, but is obviously, unsurprisingly, on a mission to end youth homelessness in Wales. I've given similar presentations to this a number of times to different parts of FEANTSA. So I'm excited to get into the Q&A section to really try and hone in on what people think would be most use for me to talk about. And I'm really happy to talk about anything and everything, from the formation through to the day-to-day stuff, to the dynamics of working as a coalition, to the next steps for EYHC that I'll talk to at the end of the presentation. So just as a quick overview, I'll quickly talk about how EYHC came to be, the formation, and what that looked like in practice. talk a little bit about the day-to-day of EYHC, so what the 4 key tenets of our work are, and then also talk about how working as a coalition has aided all of that and kind of where we're going in the future. So seamless, Sergio. Thank you for flicking over to the next slide. So very briefly, for those who aren't aware of End Youth Homelessness Cymru, we first launched in 2017 as a coalition of Welsh homelessness charities with the support of Michael Sheen and the First Minister at the time, Carwyn Jones, who pledged to end youth homelessness by 2027, which is getting pretty scarily close now with this being in 2025. But I think there's a couple of things to highlight in regards to the campaign that really set the scene for coalition working and working as a coalition going forward as a collective in Wales. So I think it's important to note that this campaign started because of a number of, or two, quite high profile safeguarding cases that came as a result of 16 and 17-year-olds being placed in inappropriate temporary accommodation. So that looks like hotels and your B&Bs, where young people, children, to put it bluntly, were being placed in close proximity to people that really shouldn't have been placed close to. And unfortunately, those safeguarding cases arose. So there's that awareness, I think, within the sector that there's something wrong with the system and how it treats young people. And they were just put into this system that was very much designed for adults and their older peers. So I think the sector kind of came together with a number of leading youth homeless charities from across Wales, but also broader homeless charities to really campaign on this issue. And it kind of, once it started, it just grew and grew and grew from that, really. It then stretched to beyond just the homeless sector, youth sector, social services, and others got involved after that kind of initial argument had been made. And then Michael Sheen, who's a famous Welsh actor, really got involved, and he very much took it from being a campaign that was within the sector and organisations within the sector talking to each other about the problem to a public-facing campaign, which then gathered mass public support. There was a number of events and a petition with 100,000 signatures, which really focused on this issue of the placement of 16 to 17-year-olds into this unsupported temporary accommodation. And I think this is the first time that really the sector had come together in Wales and kind of viewed youth homelessness as something that needs to be seen as distinct. I think before that, it was very much, what can we do in regards to young people coming into the system without really that distinct focus or appreciation of the fact that it should be seen as a separate phenomenon with then separate measures to prevent it from happening, but also with distinct measures to help alleviate it when it does unfortunately happen. So with the result of that campaign and the support behind it, the First Minister, Carwyn Jones at the time, pledged to end youth homelessness by 2027, which led to the creation of youth homeless coordinators in every local authority who sit in the youth work team. So really looking at those opportunities for early identification and prevention. And I'm happy to talk about that role in the Q&A if people are interested to hear a bit more about that, because it's a really interesting role, I think. And then also led to the formation of End Youth Homelessness Cymru as a kind of continuing the momentum and continuing the focus of the campaign. Because of that realisation of the need to treat it as distinct, EYHC was formed off the back of that campaign to really continue that focus and continue that energy around championing the importance of changing the way in which youth homelessness is viewed, and then also looking at the different solutions to preventing and ending it. So that initially that focus was very much on the distinctiveness and winning the argument around the distinctiveness of youth homelessness. And I don't have to go into the reasons why, because I'm sure everyone on the call is very much versed by all of that. But in terms of that coalition and that campaign building, that was the initial focus for the first couple of years. And as I'll touch on shortly, the focus has now kind of shifted into looking at distinct groups of young people that we know are kind of at that higher risk, and what different measures, etc., can be put in place for them to stop those young people at a particularly high risk of facing homelessness ever coming into contact with the system. So we go to the next slide, please, Sergio. I'll quickly just try and summarize a little bit of what we kind of do day to day and how I see our work. So the 4 key tenets, I like to break it down so I don't get caught rambling too much. The first one is coordinating collective impact. So as we know, youth homelessness is far more than just a housing problem. With all the different elements to it, we would look to kind of be the middleman, coordinating different action from across homelessness, housing, social services, youth work, etc., pulling it all together, academic research, and making sure that across Wales, as many partners and organisations, both as part of the UHC coalition, but those also outside of it, are aware of each other's work to make sure that people are not working in silos. We very much see our work as trying to break down those silos and encourage that collaboration and that partnership working, which is paramount to working as a coalition. The amplification of youth voice, I would see, as our primary purpose, the most important part of our work. So giving young people who've unfortunately come into contact with the homelessness system the opportunity to be involved in shaping our work, shaping our research, but then also giving them a platform to speak their truth to the decision makers across Wales, whether that's at a local authority level or at a Welsh government level, to really ensure that their voices are the ones that are driving change and driving the direction of the UHC in terms of what young people think is particularly important. Research, and I'll touch on this again, and the amplification of youth voice and why working as a coalition has aided both of these, but research is absolutely key to what we do. We obviously can't tackle youth homelessness unless we understand it. So initially, that research very much looked at kind of winning that argument around the distinctiveness. And as I've touched on, and I'll touch on again shortly, we've now looked at particular groups of young people that we know are at higher risk and where that higher risk comes from, but also a lot of our research is very action focused. We don't just want to highlight the problem. We want to kind of highlight the problem and also, with working with young people and practitioners in the field, really set out some concrete solutions and recommendations so that change can happen off the back of it. And that all of that, I think, kind of comes together into the fourth tenet, which is championing innovation and best practice. So this is very much, if we know about a particular scheme, project or approach that's working well in Wales, or a lot of the time working well in Europe, how can we take that learning and then put pressure on the local authorities and Welsh government to kind of scale it up? So an obvious example of that would be Upstream Cymru, which we borrowed from our Australian partners, and obviously Housing First for Youth, which obviously has its origins in America and obviously in Europe as well. So there's some good examples of that happening in practice, and that's why I think these webinars and opportunities to learn from what all of your respective organizations are doing across Europe is such a fantastic thing for us to be a part of, because there's so much that we've learned and so much that we can continue to learn from each other. If we go to the next slide, please, Sergio. Very much appreciate that to those outside of Wales, the images or logos on the screen might not mean too much, but I just wanted to include this to kind of show the breadth of the organizations we've got involved in the coalition. So there's a mix of kind of your familiar faces from the homelessness and housing sector, some housing association organizations, but then we've also got organizations from the care experience sector, youth work, health, a number of academics. We've really got a nice mix of organizations from outside of just housing and homelessness who are all kind of united behind this banner of trying to end youth homelessness in Wales. And from that, there's obviously such a shared knowledge, I guess. There's so much more, because we're only a team of 3 people. It'd be such a harder task for just the 3 of us to do it without being able to lean on our coalition partners and lean on them in terms of support in terms of research and other things that I'll talk about shortly, but also just in terms of our understanding of the issue with all these partners kind of united, but in this goal to tackle youth homelessness. We're really in a privileged position where we can, on different elements, we can always make sure that we're leaning in and we're hearing from basically those on the ground who are doing that day-to-day work with young people, whether that be in a homelessness situation, whether it's in a youth work situation, social services, education, and really make sure that we're tuned into what the issues are for young people, so we can make sure that UHC are doing work that is very much relevant to them. And I think it's nice that across this, we've got a nice geographical spread as well. And again, this work that wouldn't be apparent just by the logos, but I'm pleased to say, proud to say that we've got a nice spread from across Wales. We're not too Cardiff focused, which I think sometimes it's easy to be, and I'm sure that's the case for other organisations working in the capital city. It's very easy to get in your own country. It's very easy to get kind of just head down in regards to what's going on in the big cities. But I'm pleased to say that we've got a nice spread across the more rural parts of Wales as well. If we go to the next slide, Sergio, I just wanted to quickly talk about how our research has very much been furthered by involving coalition members. So our research into LGBTQ plus youth homelessness, which was done a fair while ago now, back in 2019, I believe, was very much done in partnership with Stonewall Cymru, who are the kind of lead body for LGBTQ plus, I don't say issues, but LGBT, the kind of charity that leads on LGBTQ plus rights and driving that forward. So it was a very nice partnership between ourselves and them on this piece of research, and they were very much involved in driving forward recommendations and amplifying the research. Don't Let Me Fall for the Cracks, which looked at care experienced young people and their unfortunate proximity to homelessness, was done with NIAS, who are one of the big advocacy bodies for care experienced young people in Wales. And then our roadmap to ending youth homelessness was basically a piece of research that the whole coalition took part with. There are a number of focus groups and sessions and workshops, really pulling all of that knowledge from the coalition together into what we've then put into our roadmap, which is a 5-part prevention typology that looks at the 5 different stages of prevention. So the different stages of opportunities to stop young people coming into the system. And then there's a number of schemes and projects kind of advocated at each stage around what can actually be implemented. So it's quite a practical document as well. And then if we go to the next slide, Sergio. Thank you. So yeah, this was just to talk a little bit more about amplifying youth voice in regards to working as a coalition. So just from some of the pictures on the screen, these are just from our events that we've run over the past couple of years. So the one in the top left is a panel discussion we had in the Senedd, which is the Welsh Parliament, off the back of launching our neurodiversity research. The 2 young people on the right-hand side are 2 of our neurodivergent peer researchers who were involved in the research right from the start. Sean in the middle is our policy and research officer, and then the two women on the left are youth workers, so youth homeless coordinators from Caerphilly and Conway, which are local authorities in Wales, who are very much involved in the research as well, and are 2 huge parts of our coalition. So this was a really nice example, I think, this piece of research of both involving young people, but involving coalition members, and then bringing them both together to really push for change off the back of the research and giving young people a platform to kind of speak about their experiences of both going through the system, unfortunately, as neurodivergent homeless young people, or young people experiencing homelessness, but also then for the coalition members to play such a pivotal role in the research, but then also the promotion of the research as well. So that's the main way in which we look to amplify youth voice in a concrete sense, I would say, is through the recruitment of peer researchers. And we don't obviously exclusively work with young people supported by coalition members, but it's a really useful resource for us to have, basically, in that once we're looking to recruit more young people, we've got 20, 30, 40 organizations we can effectively ask us to do some of the heavy lifting in regards to recruitment, to save us as a team of 3, as I mentioned, having to make all of those contacts with young people ourselves. I think we've got a fairly well established name now as EYHC. So I think partners and members of the coalition are very happy to kind of do that kind of, what's the word? Recommending opportunities with ourselves to the young people they support. So it's a really useful way of kind of broadening our reach and broadening our opportunity to engage with young people from across Wales. The podcast, which I would not miss the opportunity to promote. It's been brilliant actually to see how many listeners we've had from across Europe. So thank you to anyone on the call who has downloaded and listened. But just on the podcast, we thought that would be another way to amplify young people's voices. So we've just finished our first series, which is 6 episodes, each in which we explored different elements to youth homelessness in each, and we had a stakeholder and then a young person on to talk about their experiences. So, for example, we've talked about neurodiversity, LGBTQ+, rural homelessness, amongst others. So yeah, that was just another way of involving young people, but also involving coalition members, because all of the practitioners who've been involved in that have been members of the coalition going forward. And we go to the next slide, Sergio. Thank you very much. So yeah, just broadly to talk about what working as a coalition has meant. And yeah, I think there's a number of elements to it, but I think the main thing is the fact that it has enabled us to punch far, far, far above our weight as an organisation, small, tucked in, hosted by by a service provider, the biggest service provider, Llamau, in Wales for youth homelessness. But we are a team of 3 working on obviously quite a massive agenda tackling youth homelessness. So being able to lean on our coalition partners in terms of that collective knowledge and specific knowledge on specific areas has just enabled us to have a far bigger reach than we would have done if we really kept our heads in the sand and just tried to work as a free solely. So everything we do will be looking to engage partners. I think that the impact of having our united voice of EYHC kind of fronting that united voice, but then for local authorities and Welsh Government to be aware that we're effectively representing the views of about 30, 40 organisations is a powerful tool. It's not just the 3 of us waving our responses to the white paper or other consultation documents. They'll know that this is representing that united voice of that breadth of organisations. And I think also that the opportunities have allowed us as being a coalition organisation to kind of then link into that international collaboration with international partnerships, both with European opportunities, but also with Canadians, or I'm sure a number of members on the call are linked in with, and also America and Australia as well. I think in working through a coalition, you've got so many more people advocating for you. There's been so many opportunities that have come up as a result of academics in our coalition. Peter Mackey, for example, being able to link us in with fellow academics in Canada, but has then just allowed us so many more opportunities for furthering our own understanding, but also promoting our own work. And there's a really nice example of that with the simulation, the youth experiential learning simulation, where the American partners had designed it and started rolling it out. They were coming to Brussels to run it at the World Justice Forum. Pete got wind of this through the Canadians, who recommended that Angela and Brian, the Americans, stopped in Wales on the way, and we were able to run the simulation and then convince the Americans to come back and train us. And now we've become the first accredited YXLS facilitators beyond just Angela and Brian. And none of that would have happened if we weren't working as a coalition and working in a way that allowed members really the opportunity to feed into our work and give us a call and say, I think we've got a great opportunity here. Are you interested in jumping on, and just seeing how it goes? So I think it's that openness and allowing people to feel a part of it, and not just closing off and then meeting once a year. It's allowing that constant conversation between partners and ourselves and organisations to really feed in and drive the direction. I think that's certainly something that I'm really keen to continue to do. And then if we just flick to the next slide, Sergio, and I'm conscious I've probably rambled on for a fair while, but just to kind of give people a bit of a heads up of the direction of EYHC. So as I mentioned, we were formed back in 2017, and the driver of that campaign was really the CEO of Llamau, the biggest service provider in Wales. So as a result of that, it made sense in terms of not accruing more costs by establishing a separate charity to be EYHC. It was very much that the campaign would effectively just be hosted by Llamau for us to not have to set up different structures, new structures, to continue to be as streamlined and slick as possible. The decision was made that EYHC would just be hosted by Llamau. And that's where we've been since 2017, and it's been brilliant. But because of potential, with the size of Llamau now, because they've grown from strength to strength because of the quality of the work that they do, we've reached a point where we were struggling to go for certain elements of funding because of the size of the organisation of which we were part. So we have now made the decision to register ourselves as an independent charity, and that process is ongoing currently. But yeah, really exciting, but also quite daunting and quite stressful. But yeah, just to kind of show, I guess, the journey from starting off as a campaign around the placement or the inappropriateness of placement of 16 and 17-year-olds in temporary accommodation 8 years ago, all the way through to now, where the kind of the brand of EYHC and the importance of youth homelessness is deemed so strong in Wales that we're now at the point where we're registered as our own independent charity and set ourselves up, hopefully, to secure sustainability of EYHC for many years to come, so we can continue to do our work and continue to try and make a difference. That's all I had to say, Sergio. Hopefully that's been interesting and a bit of a whistle-stop tour of who we are, what we do, and yeah, really happy to answer anything and everything in the Q&A if it's of use to people.
Thank you so much, Bill, for this very insightful presentation. And it really is admirable, I would say, how this process took place from very like a very one-off campaign in 2017 until really like a new established charity now, like very recently. So that's way that's work in the long term pays off. Yeah. So thank you so much. And please write down any questions that you may have. We will answer them later at the end of the webinar. And now I will just give the floor to Shivan, who will present.
I'll just share my screen and portion this. Right, just one moment now. This will just take a second to. Let me just. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so thank you so much, Bill, for sharing. It was great to hear about your coalition. It's really encouraging to hear about the work of other coalitions. But my name is Siobhan Raymond Breuer. I'm the chair of the Irish Coalition to End Youth Homelessness. I've had this role since October 2024 when I became policy officer at Focus Ireland. So today I'm just going to talk about the formation and some background information on our coalition, our structure and our membership, some of our work, including the National Youth Homeless Strategy, which is a big portion of our work, some information about youth homelessness in Ireland, some benefits of the coalition, some challenges we face as a coalition, and also some recommendations for a successful and productive coalition. So first of all, our background. So the Irish Coalition to End Youth Homelessness was established in September 2017. The coalition was created to consolidate the efforts of various organisations working in youth and homelessness, and to advocate for a national strategy on youth homelessness. We are committed to the objective of consistently reducing the level of homelessness among young adults with the ultimate goal of ending youth homelessness. We believe that this is a prerequisite to the commitment that Ireland has taken to work towards ending youth homelessness or homelessness as a whole by 2030 as provided under the Lisbon Declaration. So our membership. So the coalition is made up of 19 organisations that focus on issues related to homelessness, housing and youth in Ireland. Each of these organisations bring unique expertise and perspectives, which strengthens our collective ability to advocate for meaningful change and end youth homelessness. So as you can see, there is like a wide range of organisations. We're not just homeless organisations. We also include the National Youth Council of Ireland. We have USI, who represent the colleges in Ireland. We also have EPIC, who focus on care leavers. So there's a wide range, and we'll be able to speak out on a lot of different issues. Just the next slide. There we go. So our structure. So the coalition operates through the combined efforts of its membership organisations, each contributing their resources, personnel and expertise to address youth homelessness in Ireland collectively. The coalition has no overarching governance, structure or leadership and no legal existence. Focus Ireland provides secretariat support to the coalition as well as chairing the monthly meetings. Focus Ireland also links the coalition to other European coalitions via FEANTSA, like we are today, and the coalition maintains a close working relationship with members of the Youth Homeless Strategy Steering Group. The Secretariat and Chair of the coalition, which is me, attends the steering group's meetings under the title Youth Representatives. So just some more information about that. In 2023, when our steering group was published, or our strategy was published, it was decided that a steering group would be created of stakeholders who would monitor the implementation of the youth homeless strategy. So the steering group meets quarterly, and these meetings are attended by representatives of the Department of Housing, the Department of Children, the Department of Justice, also TUSLA, who are the Child and Family Agency in Ireland, representatives from our local authorities in Ireland, and the HSE, who's Ireland's Public Health Service. And these meetings are also chaired by Dr. Paula Mayock, who's an independent chair. So as a coalition, our presence at these meetings is extremely valuable as it allows us to have a direct input into the implementation of the strategy and develop relationships with those involved in implementing it. So our mission. We believe that youth homelessness is a problem which can and must be solved. Members of the coalition are committed to working together towards the following objectives. So firstly, better data and awareness of youth homelessness, services that match the distinct needs of young people, and better policy to prevent youth homelessness. We also encourage better collaboration by all bodies which interact with young people at risk of or currently experiencing homelessness in Ireland. So this is kind of the guiding document of our work. The actions of the strategy really do guide how we work as a coalition. So the Youth Homeless Strategy, which is set to conclude at the end of this year, currently of the 27 actions that were set out, only 7 have been achieved. The strategy was published in 2022. The coalition made a number of submissions during the drafting process of this strategy, and we met with the Department of Housing to provide feedback on its draft content. Although not all of our submission recommendations were achieved, this dialogue during the drafting process made a significant impact on what was ultimately published. So, as I said previously, through the steering group, the coalition continues to work closely with the Department of Housing and other state agencies involved in the implementation of the strategy, and we are considered a valuable voice in its implementation, and our expertise and opinions are really valued. So just some information about youth homelessness in Ireland. So the official definition of youth homelessness under the Youth Homeless Strategy is those aged between 18 and 24. However, the coalition recognises the experiences of older minors, so 16 to 17-year-olds, that we recognise that their experiences play a critical role in creating the conditions for young adult homelessness. Therefore, policies and services for older minors are also part of our concerns. So this is particularly relevant in discussions surrounding prevention and when advocating for those leaving state care. So part 2 of youth homelessness in Ireland. So the strategy identifies 6 specific cohorts as being of heightened vulnerability. So this includes care leavers, young people with disabilities, young parents, members of the traveller community, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and individuals leaving the prison services. The coalition also recognises that members of migrant or ethnic groups are also disproportionately represented in youth homelessness. So despite them not being mentioned in the current strategy, we do advocate for their needs and rights as well. So just here I have a graph that can be found on the Focus Ireland website. This graph shows, better, I think, yeah. This graph shows the monthly figures of youth homelessness since 2024. So in Ireland, the Department of Housing releases the overall homeless figures each month. These figures only account for people accessing emergency accommodation. They do not include individuals who are rough sleeping in domestic violence shelters or experiencing hidden homelessness like couch surfing. As you can see here, youth homelessness has continued to rise since 2024, and most significantly since the publication of the Youth Homeless Strategy in 2023. In January of 2025, a total of 15,286 individuals accessed emergency accommodation in Ireland. Of those, and you can see that just up here, it might be a bit small, 1,798 were aged 18 to 24. So this also includes young parents and adult dependents, so that there is an overlap between youth homelessness and family homelessness. And it also shows that youth homelessness is a diverse population. One of the strengths of our coalition is the diversity of our membership. So we have organisations that advocate and are experts in certain cohorts. So we have young parent organisations, we have organisations that focus on care leavers. And these monthly figures are crucial for our advocacy, as they help us identify trends, and they help us and they also guide our actions. So the more data that we have, the better really important piece of data that recently came out was published by the Dublin Regional Homeless Executive. So this was a report focusing on young people accessing emergency accommodation in 2023. It provided a lot of valuable insights in the experiences of migrant youth in Ireland. And as migrant youth are not recognised in the current strategy, we are going to use this data to advocate for them to be included in the second strategy. So some of our work in 2025, as well as me as the new chair, so I'm about 6 months in. So 2024 was quite a busy year politically in Ireland. We had both local and general elections. So as a coalition, we advocated for youth homelessness to be prioritised in these elections. And we're currently working on creating and maintaining relationships with the newly elected officials. The main part of our work this year, especially as it's coming to an end, is monitoring and advising the implementation of the National Youth Homeless Strategy. So we've picked some actions that we think should be prioritised because it's not likely that all 27 actions will be completed by the end of the year. So at the steering group meeting, we've stressed certain actions that focus on kind of trying to represent all of the vulnerable cohorts and actions that we think are the best ones out of the strategy. We're also advocating for a second youth homeless strategy, and we hope that would be published next year, so there's not a big gap between strategies. So we're meeting next month in person to discuss what a second strategy would look like and how we will campaign for it. So some benefits of the coalition. I've picked 3 of our benefits. There's a lot more. But the coalition brings together a diverse range of organisations, and this unity offers several important benefits. So the first one is collective strength and influence. By joining forces, we amplify our voices and significantly increase our ability to advocate for change. We have the power to influence policy decisions and drive attention to youth homelessness in a way that individual organisations cannot achieve alone. We can respond to issues concerning youth homelessness as one collective voice rather than as individual organisations. This has strengthened our advocacy efforts, making our message clearer and more impactful when engaging with policymakers, media, government agencies and the public. So by speaking together, we can ensure that youth homelessness remains a national priority and that our collective expertise carries a greater weight in decision-making spaces. So the second benefit of the coalition is expertise and collaboration. So each member of our coalition brings unique knowledge and expertise in different areas. This collaboration allows us to tackle youth homelessness from multiple angles, ensuring our solutions are well-rounded. And finally, accountability and policy monitoring. As a coalition, we monitor the government's implementation of the strategy, ensuring that the commitments are followed through. By holding policymakers accountable, we ensure that the National Youth Homeless Strategy remains effective and responsive to the needs of young people. So some challenges. So the first challenge is ensuring a balanced representation. So although I chair the meetings, I also work for Focus Ireland, which means that there is always the potential for our organisation to be overrepresented. To manage this, I ensure that someone else from Focus Ireland attends the meetings to represent the organisation's interests while I chair. Our meetings are also shaped by who attends. So for instance, if a meeting is predominantly attended by organisations representing a certain cohort of youth, the conversation tends to be guided by those specific concerns. To address this, as chair, I actively encourage diversity in attendance so that discussions remain broad and inclusive. And I also make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak at the meetings and encourage everyone to share updates on their work and their organisation. I also reach out to members if their organisation hasn't been present in a meeting in a while. Sharing the workload. So as the main point of contact for the coalition, I'm often involved in a lot of our work. This can be overwhelming and prevents other members from being fully involved in the group. To tackle this, we establish working groups for specific issues. These groups allow members to collaborate, tap into each other's expertise, and divide responsibilities effectively. This ensures that everybody's strengths are being utilised and that no one person becomes overwhelmed. This also frees up some time during meetings. For example, we are currently monitoring the implementation of the strategy and advocating for a second one. This takes up a lot of our time. But there are some members who want to work on addressing youth homelessness on more of a local issues and have a lot of expertise and experience in this. So they have established a working group on kind of working with local councillors. And then members who are not involved in this working group receive updates on this work on at our monthly meetings. So the last challenge, and the challenge that I'm not really sure how to combat, but it is something that we need to work on, is the strategy guiding our work. So the National Youth Homeless Strategy is our main guiding document. However, this often limits the coalition's ability to address certain issues that are not mentioned in the strategy. Our advocacy should go beyond these limitations to ensure that we effectively work together to end youth homelessness. So some recommendations for anyone who would be interested in creating or developing a coalition. The first one is to hold monthly meetings online. So it's easier to keep track of our work, and meeting regularly means that we can keep track of upcoming and recent developments concerning youth homelessness. For example, during the recent general election, it was great to be in contact before and after the election to inform our response and work with the new government. If we had met quarterly, we wouldn't have been able to respond, and a lot of changes would have happened in the political landscape. And also, that means we have 12 meetings a year. So it's really productive, and also we get to work together, and it's great as well with like monitoring the strategy, because if something does come up, we have a lot of meetings where we can discuss that. Another thing is pre-schedule meetings and set out an agenda. So we meet monthly, and it's always the second last Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Now, this isn't set in stone. We can reschedule these meetings if there's an event coming up, or if a lot of people are on annual leave, or if there's like a holiday. But it is good because members know to keep that time free every month, and also to set out an agenda. So I send out the agenda for the meetings maybe like a week and a half before the actual meeting. And I encourage members to kind of edit the agenda and include things that they want to bring up. But it also means that members can kind of research the different topics that we're going to talk about, and so that they have a certain level of background knowledge when we meet. Another thing is to appoint an independent chair. So this ensures that all voices are equally represented. One person who is a point of contact for the coalition ensures that we maintain a united voice, and that relationships can be formed between the chair and state agencies. For example, if we had a different person attending each steering group meeting, it would be harder to maintain a relationship with those involved in implementing the strategy. As the main point of contact for the coalitions, stakeholders tend to contact me, and I share the information with coalition, but I can also put them in contact with members who maybe have more expertise on certain issues. Diversity. So if this was a coalition that only focused on or only had included homeless organizations, a lot of issues would be overlooked. So our diverse membership is our biggest asset, and we can share resources and expertise surrounding different issues. So our membership includes travel organizations that help care leavers, homeless organizations that focus on different aspects of homelessness. We also have the National Youth Council of Ireland. We also have an approved housing body, which is Clúid, and Clúid are currently working with Focus Ireland on one of the actions of the strategy, which is supported housing for youth, which is a pilot of a model which is based off Housing First for Youth. And it has been noted regularly at the steering group meetings as one of the most successful actions of the strategy. But it's great to have kind of that wide range, and that we're all on the same page about the issue of youth homelessness. And the next thing is to encourage collaboration. So it is important that as a coalition, you maintain a strong working relationships with members. The working groups are a great way to achieve this, as it allows us to learn from one another. And then finally, stay connected. So I'm in regular contact with the coalition. Sometimes I meet members individually if there's a certain issue that they want to bring up in the meetings, and we can pre-plan. We email each other various updates and resources concerning youth homelessness. And if there's a certain update that comes up about the strategy, I tend to email the coalition. We discuss this at meetings with everyone having a certain level of background knowledge. yeah, it's definitely been really useful to be able to advocate for youth homelessness as a coalition instead of as an individual organization. It's just the level of knowledge and also the level of, I think, the reputation that the coalition has. And we've been contacted by media, we're contacted by stakeholders involved in the implementation of the strategy. And yeah, it's a respected voice in the surrounding the issue of youth homelessness. But that's all I have. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Shivan, for the presentation. And we could see, I think, that some similarities to the experience in Wales, but also some differences as well, like especially in terms of who is chairing the meeting and sharing the workload also as in the position that you have in Focus Ireland, which involves quite some extra workload. So yeah, thank you so much. And now we are a bit ahead of time, so that's very good news. It means that we'll have more time for the Q&A. So I encourage you now to either turn on your camera and mic if you want to participate and ask some questions for the speakers, keeping in mind that the webinar is recorded. Or if you don't want to appear in the recording, please feel free to send your question in the chat box of the webinar. So I see that Anna has made a question in the chat, but maybe you prefer to say it out loud. I see that you turned on your camera. Please, maybe you can introduce yourself first and then ask the question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for very nice presentations, both of you. I'm Anna. I'm from the Danish coalition to end youth homelessness in Denmark. And one of my colleagues is also attending the webinar, and we were just curious about the connection between the coalition in Wales and the national reform or strategies to end youth homelessness or end homelessness in general. If you could explore a little bit more about how you work with national strategies in Wales. Bill, thank you.
Yeah, of course, Anna, no problem. Thanks for the question. Yeah, so it's been a frustrating battle of EYHC, I can't lie, since our formation, and we look very, very enviously over the Irish Sea at Siobhan and Ireland because, yeah, they have a youth homelessness strategy, and unfortunately in Wales we don't. It's been the primary ask of EYHC since our formation that there should be a complementary youth homelessness strategy that sits akin to the broader homelessness strategy within Wales, following the same principles. But we've always thought that achieving that strategy really embodies viewing youth homelessness as something that needs to be seen as distinct. Obviously, it's not wholly separate. We're not arguing that it's wholly separate, but we believe that achieving that strategy will finally allow us to kind of put a tick next to that argument of seeing youth homelessness as distinct. In fairness to the Welsh Government, over the course of the last couple of years, far more has been made around youth homelessness and the importance of prevention. So a lot of energy, time and resources being placed in regards to prevention, but we've not quite cracked it, but they've gone the full distance as we would see it in creating that strategy. So but in regards to the coalition element of that, yeah, so there's been a lot of consultations and engagement with the sector in regards to strategies and how the Welsh Government should do that. So, and over the course of that, we'll always try and put a response in as EYHC, but we're confident reflects the views of our members. And specifically on the white paper from a year ago now, one of the groups that we host is a quarterly meeting of organisations in focus in regards to care experienced young people and homelessness. So while we ended up for that consultation writing two strategies, one that was just representing the coalition of EYHC as a whole, and then one which represented the views of the distinct group of the care leavers group. So that actually was quite interesting because within that we had against some of the proposals that Welsh Government had promoted, they were interested in exploring. For young people as a whole, we thought some of them were positive, but then for that care leaver demographic, some of them were going to be quite negative. So the two responses actually varied on some of the questions or some of the proposals quite a lot. So that was quite an interesting dynamic to be in the middle of, where we were arguing for one thing as EYHC, but then with the EYHC care experience hat on, we were actually in that response arguing for something quite different. So yeah, we'll always try and ensure that when we're responding to government consultation, we're reaching out to members and, importantly, reaching out to young people as well. So making sure that their voices are feeding into that as well. But yeah, we do look enviously over the Irish Sea and further to Canada as well, because yeah, we haven't quite got there yet with a distinct youth homelessness strategy, but we'll see. Maybe, hopefully one day.
Okay, thank you so much for this first question. And please, I open the floor to other people that may have other questions. Well, if not, I have a few questions actually. So yeah. Meanwhile, the people in the room can think about other possible things to ask. So yeah, I had a question for Shivan, because you said that as part of your coalition, you have partners like the National Youth Council or the Union of Students. And I find this very interesting because in some other countries, these kind of bodies organizations, they are not really familiar or even like aware of the issues about social exclusion generally, or even like homelessness in particular among young people. So yeah, could you explain us a little bit like how these partners are involved, and if you would have any recommendations for people in the audience about how to involve these kind of partners in the fight to end youth homelessness?
Because kind of the youth kind of cohort is a really diverse population, it is really important that we have kind of every corner covered. So those coalitions, or those members of the coalition, they bring in certain expertise. So with the USI, which is the Student Union of Ireland, they bring in the experiences of young people who may be struggling, who are in education, who might be experiencing homelessness. But we also, as a coalition, can inform them about the different avenues that they can use through both the coalition, but also through policy to support these young people. It also equally influences our advocacy as a coalition with the National Youth Council of Ireland, who is one of the founding members of the coalition. They represent loads of different organisations in Ireland who work on issues in the youth sector. So they bring up certain trends, certain issues. It's also great to have them as a partner, just to bring awareness of our work as a coalition amongst the youth sector. So yeah, it's kind of if it was just organizations that focus predominantly on youth homelessness or homelessness as a whole, we would miss out a lot of voices. Another really valuable member of the organization it's an LGBT organization. They're currently working with us on one of the actions and the strategy, which is developing a training for young people who are part of the LGBT community accessing homeless services in Dublin, in the Dublin area. But yeah, there's just certain issues that we wouldn't be educated on as just solely homeless organizations. So it's great to have that kind of wide knowledge.
Great. And would you have any recommendations for local service providers that may be hearing this in this call, and that would see this as useful to reach to these kind of organizations?
Yeah, I think, when forming a coalition, if you kind of use research on youth homelessness to kind of compile who you think should be part of the coalition. So we had research on LGBT youth homelessness, so we knew we needed an organization that focuses on LGBT, or we also have research on care leavers. That was another area that would have been included. So it's really just using research, pre-existing research on youth homelessness and knowledge and data to inform who should be part of your coalition.
Okay, thank you so much. I see that Talita also wants to ask a question.
Yes. Hi, my name is Talita. I'm from the same organizations as Anna. And just a question for you, Siobhan. You said that you meet 12 times a year, once a month. Is that the entire coalition, or is it in smaller, subject-focused groups?
So the entire coalition is invited to our monthly meetings. So that's 19 organizations. Not everybody shows up every month. Everyone has different work commitments, but we are in constant communication. So the minutes from the meetings is shared with everyone. And if anybody has any questions who couldn't attend the organization, I also can meet with them or email them. But yeah, no, there is great attendance at the meetings. At our last meeting, which was this week, we had 13 people show up. So it is, yeah, it's prioritized by the majority, if not all, of the organizations involved, which is great.
And for how long do you meet?
We meet, the meetings are set out for an hour, but usually I try to keep it to 40 minutes. Just it encourages people to attend if the meetings are a little bit shorter.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, yes, sorry, I was muted. Philip, also, please go ahead.
Hi there. I'm Philipp Schnell. I'm from the Austrian Academy of Sciences, and we are recently establishing like an early detection system for people in schools, so parallel to these international programs. And I was very impressed by Shivan's presentation, or by both of your presentations, and I want to ask Shivan about the numbers you presented on the number of people affected by youth homelessness, because you said they were recorded via the pass system, and like in Austria we have like a bit of a problem like to get a clear picture on this group. And can you elaborate a little bit which groups the pass system like reaches, and maybe where there are gray areas, and are there any strategies to reach beyond the data that is produced by the pass system, or is there any option to get a clear view of people who are not covered in this data?
Yes, so as I said, the data focuses on people, individuals accessing emergency accommodation in Ireland. So it looks at individuals, but then there's 18 to 24-year-olds. There's also children and families are also recorded. There's also gender information about gender and different age groups as well. Something that as like a coalition focusing on youth, we really are trying to focus on more information about the youth demographics. So when the numbers come out, it really just says youth. But as I highlighted, there's information about young parents, and the percentage of young people who are care leavers accessing emergency accommodation is really important. Another valuable kind of piece of information is that it can't just be quantitative research, it has to be qualitative research as well, because when young people are accessing emergency accommodation, it tends to be the most recent or the primary reason that they consider for their homelessness or for their accessing emergency accommodation. So they might say the first thing is, their landlord decided to sell the place that they were currently staying, or they might have had a relationship breakdown in their family, but that might ignore certain other issues, like the whole context of their life. They might have previously been a care leaver, and they might be a member of the LGBTQ plus community. So just the more data and the more research we can get on the group, the better we would be for advocating for them. For the other part of your question, which was you wanted to look at
if you have any idea about the gray areas that are
yes.
maybe not covered in the official data,
yes.
So
Yeah.
because that's a big thing, or a big topic around here.
So there is a rough sleepers count that the EU does, but we don't have the opportunity to look at beyond emergency accommodation for the monthly figures at the moment. in Ireland, but that the emergency accommodation. So when Ireland kind of releases our monthly figures, it's really just emergency accommodation that is being focused on. And so it is important that we note that every time we say the figure, that it's actually a lot higher, because those people who are not represented, especially in hidden homelessness, where young people are overrepresented, and that the number is probably a lot higher.
Thank you.
See anyone else raising their hands? So yeah, maybe I will take the chance to ask Il, because in the very first slide of your presentation, you mentioned that the campaign had the aim to end youth homelessness by 2027. So that's only 2 years ahead. I would like to ask you, what is the status of this goal? What is the commitment of the Welsh government in this regard? And you could give us more details.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, unsurprisingly, we're not on track, unfortunately. Ending youth homelessness in a sentence as a commitment is obviously very, very ambitious. It's been frustrating because although it's the same party in power as it was when that commitment was made back in 2017, it's the Labour Party still in power. They're reticent to be too held by it because it was a previous administration. So when we ask specific questions through, if we were to engage with either backbench MSs or members of the Senate, sorry, if we were to engage with members of the Senate from backbench, so not in government, of the same party, or opposition parties, to ask specific questions on youth homelessness, which we do frequently, they're not too forthcoming to be held by that commitment, which is frustrating. They give kind of very straight bat answers around being committed to ending all forms of homelessness, and they won't get too tied on that specific commitment, which is frustrating, because if we knew what we knew now in regards to what needed to be done, I think back in 2017, and there was that real watertight focus on implementation and action and taking the positive steps needed to prevent people coming into contact with the system, because that's the predominant focus of our work, is because we know obviously how damaging coming into contact with the system is for young people, and unfortunately how much more likely young people are to experience homelessness on a repeated basis if they've come into the system once. If we knew what we knew now back in 2017 about the importance of prevention and the different schemes that we could implement to identify and support young people at that earlier stage, then I don't think it would have been unreasonable to think that potentially it wouldn't have been ended, but it could have been significantly improved as a situation. And I do think it probably will take a generation, if not longer. So it's frustrating, but we haven't seen too much movement. The number when the campaign started was around 6,000 young people in Wales coming into contact with the system, either experiencing homelessness or being threatened with homelessness. And as Siobhan's made reference to, that obviously doesn't capture young people experiencing hidden homelessness. So we go on the estimation that it's probably about 3 times higher, the actual number, because research in Wales has shown that it takes young people about 6 months of experiencing homelessness to come into contact with the system. So the numbers are probably going to be far higher. And it's fluctuated. It dropped in the incidence of COVID, where there was more proactive principles, and then off the back of that, with the cost of living crisis, it's starting to increase again. So yeah, it's a frustrating picture. We have national elections here next year, so in about 14, 15 months' time. So I'm really keen that we can try and use that pledge, and to an extent, the lack of change in the numbers, to really try and hammer home some commitments from all the parties in regards to prioritising this as a real key issue and a real emergency, basically, because it is an emergency in Wales at the moment. The numbers of young people that are coming into contact with the system, and it's going in the wrong direction in terms of the numbers. So it needs that real focus again, like there was 7 or 8 years ago off the back of it. So yeah, it's quite frustrating. in an extent the lack of change in regards to the numbers, but I think the positives we've got is the understanding now, and is that buy-in from the sector to really unite behind it as a really important goal. So it's frustrating, and unfortunately we're not going to hit that target because it hasn't been honoured by different administrations after that initial pledge was made to the extent that it needed to make it a reality.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that you really raise an important point here when you talk about prevention, because already like working with young people when they come in contact with the system and the services, maybe that's already too late. And maybe if more action or more targeted policies happens in this 6 months period that you talked about, or even before, maybe the numbers of young people in homelessness would really drop sustainably. So that's definitely something to have in mind. Okay, so is there someone else from the audience that want to ask another question? Maybe as a general reflection, if you find that this kind of coalition work, you're already doing something similar in your context, or maybe that even if you are not doing something now, if you see some potential or some opportunities in doing so in the near future. And someone from the audience wants to give their opinion. Yeah, please, Anna, go ahead.
It's just a general reflection, because in Denmark, we are a coalition of organizations, 22 organizations, all working to end youth homelessness, meaning young people under 30. But what we have realized throughout the process is that we needed also to work on a general, not only strategy, but an actual reform of the whole way we work with ending homelessness in Denmark, because we cannot really reach the more systemic changes that we're working for if we don't work on the whole issue of reforming our homelessness system, getting together housing policies and social policies in a joint reform that also involves some economic incentives for the municipalities to work differently. So I was just thinking about the whole work of working with a strategy specifically for young people versus having a strong national reform on the whole issue of ending homelessness. And if you have any discussions about these different approaches in your countries. Did my question make sense?
Bill or Shivan, I don't know if you want to react on that, about this kind of structural reforms needed within the homeless sector itself.
I think as my coalition, like it really is focused on the national strategy and to end youth homelessness. That is like our main thing, but we do see challenges with that because, you know, the actions are guiding our work more than us guiding kind of being able to focus on other issues. That is something that we need to kind of explore. Especially we've discovered that a lot of the actions now that we're towards the end of the strategy and we're discussing a second one, they have been quite vague. And, you know, there's so many different stakeholders and kind of the opinion of whether a kind of an action is complete or, you know, measuring the impact that the strategy actually has had on the lives of young people. So that is something that we kind of, you know, there is the difference between, you know, the strategy and then our advocacy as a coalition is something that we do have to explore. So it is something that I think about.
Yeah, and I think with us not having an actual youth homelessness strategy, the context or dynamics of that are a little bit different. Our focus then is really trying to shoehorn the importance of our prevention, as I mentioned a number of times. And I think that's well received by Welsh Government, to be fair. They're very on board with that prevention approach, because that transcends, I think there's obviously specific preventative work you can do with young people, but there's a lot of preventative work you can do with all ages, all people of all ages, to prevent that experience of homelessness from occurring. So they're very on side with that, whilst, to be fair to them, they do really appreciate the unique opportunity that prevention provides for youth homelessness. But then it's very much for us about trying to shoehorn as much in regards around the strategy or proposals that they see for all ages, of making sure that the youth element to that strategy is strong, and trying to get in at parts where this will be young people's experience of this will be different because X, Y, and Z in the strategy. And as a result of that, there needs to be X, Y, and Z taken into consideration when planning for types of accommodation, etc. So yeah, it comes back to that previous answer in terms of it's frustrating that there's not a youth homeless strategy that can really guide us and that we can really critique, I guess, from the Welsh Government, but we're always working on that broader action plan of ending youth homelessness in Wales and making sure that young people and youth voices as big a part of that as possible.
Yes, Philip, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much. This goes very well with what we are like trying to do or trying to start up a little bit in Austria, because strangely enough, there's no consistent strategy on homelessness. On the other hand, there's a big housing first initiatives, and this is going quite well. And so there's different strands of strategies that go in a little bit in parallel. But of course, the topic of youth homelessness is a little bit underserved at the moment. So that's why we try to get a little bit closer to this prevention kind of perspective, and to create more reliable numbers in this sense. So my question would be, if we're building a new or trying to build a new strategy in a country, can you maybe elaborate a little bit? Maybe Bill, what would be your recommendations if you would like build it from scratch, the whole thing?
Yeah, thanks, Philip. That's quite a big question. I'm happy to jump on a call at some point in the next couple of weeks or months or something if you want to catch up on it in a bit more detail. I would say, from my own understanding of different schemes, projects, and approaches that have been particularly effective in preventing youth homelessness and getting that as the top end of the strategy, so that real key area. And I think, so I would advocate looking at the Geelong project in Australia, so Upstream, which has been rolled out now across a number of different European countries and North America as well. So it's a school-based intervention in which a universal survey is undertaken by all pupils in school, and the survey differs across the different countries in which it's rolled out in. But effectively, the survey is a well-being survey, and it asks young people about their experiences of school, their relationships with friends and family, and a number of well-being questions. And from that metric, then a score is given to the young people, and it also asks obviously questions about their housing situation and potential housing insecurity. And from that, a metric through the algorithm of the platform is developed, and the young people are ranked green, yellow, or red. Red experiencing or at high risk of homelessness, yellow at risk, and green but fine. But from the Australian experience, they found that 65% of young people at high risk of experiencing homelessness weren't known to other services. So it very much flipped the understanding of the young people who are at risk of youth homelessness on its head. So it wasn't the young people at the back of a class who weren't in school. Obviously, they have their own risks, but there's a high number of young people who are kind of going under the radar until it's too late, and that's when they come into that crisis stage. So Upstream really allows countries the opportunity to get in at that earlier stage and do that early intervention work quite often before issues are actually related to homelessness, because as we know, family breakdown is the key cause of youth homelessness. So effectively, Upstream has allowed a load of mediation work to go in to families that has prevented family breakdown in Australia, where there's the longest time frame of it having been rolled out. They've seen a 1/3 reduction in youth homelessness presentations. So I think if you're going to build a strategy, I would base it on prevention, and I would base prevention on rolling out Upstream as far as you can. And yeah, happy to catch up outside of this meeting in a bit more detail on that and on anything more if you'd be interested.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Just to give further details about this Upstream scheme, and now it's being implemented in several other parts in Europe, for example, in Scotland or in Flanders. And in Flanders, since you are also a researcher, Philip, you said it before, this program is being monitored by the University of Leuven. So yeah, happy to give you some context from there, and maybe they can be helpful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this elaboration. Yeah, we are already in contact with the KU Leuven for this Upstream project, and so I hope to be seeing you in another setting on this topic soon.
Okay, that's great. So I don't see anyone else raising their hand. So yeah, I think that we can finish the call here. Yeah, thank you so much for all of you for joining us today, for taking the time to listen to the presentations, and I hope that you found them useful and that you leave this meeting with a lot of new thoughts and ideas that you could take to your own context. And of course, thank you so much, Shivan and Bill, for your work and for the presentations. That I think they were very insightful and helpful for the audience to have a better picture of what the great work that you're doing. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you, Sergio. Ta-da.
Bye.